Forgetting everything that's been said, rising to minimal levels of morality, let's try to answer the question. Well, we can start by asking how should a long series of countries around the world react to Western state terrorism? So to just take one uncontroversial case. How should Nicaragua react to U.S. terrorism against Nicaragua? I mean, that case is uncontroversial because we have a World Court decision, and we would have had a Security Council resolution except that the U.S. vetoed it. So it's uncontroversial, and it's much worse than September 11th. You know, tens of thousands of people killed, country practically destroyed, may never recover. So how should Nicaragua have responded to U.S. terror? Well, one possibility is to bomb Washington. Does anybody believe that's the way they should have responded? Another might be, say, bioterror. Another may be assassinate the president. Anybody believe that that's a proper response? I mean, I've never seen anybody who believes it. I certainly don't believe it. Okay, but if we don't believe that that was a right response to our atrocities, then it's not the right response to their atrocities, particularly when it's people who didn't even do it, like the people in Afghanistan had nothing to do with this. So the real question is, should Nicaragua have set off bombs in, I don't know, Oklahoma or something? It's ridiculous. So therefore, the entire Western response, by Western standards, is totally illegitimate. In fact, let's take contemporary terrorism. Plenty of it. I mean, September 11th was a terrorist atrocity. So is the reaction to it. Literally, by the literal meaning of the word terrorism as defined in U.S. official documents. Terrorism is the calculated threat or use of violence to achieve political or other ends through intimidation or fear. All right. Suppose you announce to people, we're going to continue to bomb you unless you turn over to us people who we suspect of crimes, though we're not going to provide you with any evidence and we're going to refuse negotiations. I'm quoting George Bush. That's terrorism in the literal sense, extreme terrorism. Or let's go on a few weeks later, end of October, the U.S. and Britain changed their war aims. They shifted it to overthrowing the regime. So Admiral Boyce, the British Minister of Defense, announced to the people of Afghanistan, you have to understand that we're going to continue to bomb you until you get your leadership changed. Textbook illustration of terrorism. Okay, what's the right response? Is it to assassinate Bush and Boyce? To bomb the United States and England? No, it's not. So any of the responses that are taken are obviously illegitimate, at least if we rise to minimal moral levels. Well, how do you deal with it? Well, actually, there are proposals that make some sense, like the Vatican, those radicals in the Vatican. Or take, say, Foreign Affairs, the main establishment journal. In the current issue, it happens to have published an article which was actually written in October by Michael Howard, who's the preeminent Anglo-American military historian. He's got all the right credentials, very supportive of the British Empire, thinks the American Empire is even more wonderful, so perfect person. And a major military historian. What he says is, in the case of a criminal conspiracy, which is what this obviously was, the right approach is to carry out careful police investigation, find evidence as to who the perpetrators were. If it's international and you have the evidence, go to an appropriate international authority, which could be, say, the Security Council. Under their authorization, carry out actions, if they won't turn them over to you, which they might have, under their authorization, carry out actions to find and apprehend the perpetrators, bring them to an international tribunal where they can get a fair trial. Okay? Well, that's an approach. And in fact, if we take that approach seriously, we would do the same thing to Admiral Boyce, Tony Blair, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George Bush the First, and anyone else. The people who were running the current war on terrorism, like Donald Rumsfeld, who was Ronald Reagan's special advisor to the Middle East when they were terrorizing the whole region, John Negroponte, who's running the diplomatic side of the current war on terrorism and was the proconsul in Honduras, organizing the Contra armies attacking Nicaragua, for which the U.S. was condemned by the World Court. Yeah, right down the list. We would do the same thing to them. That's assuming that we could reach minimal levels of moral integrity. And of course, all of this is so remote from anything that you can even talk about in the West that it's hard to say the words. But then there's an elementary conclusion that follows from that. Everyone in the West, and I have to include myself here because I don't propose this either, everyone in the West is such a total hypocrite that for them even to talk about questions of right or wrong is a disgrace.